Hi people, we're going to do a little quick video here, and it's going to be just part of the deprogramming method to try and get your heads wrapped around this. A lot of you are getting traffic tickets and citations for different things, masks and whatever. You got to get the basics down, and I'm going to try and teach you some of the basics. And this is stuff that I don't think anyone's ever taught you, and luckily I've just crossed paths with some really good people that knew what they were doing. Guys that basically travel without license plates and tags and whatnot, and they leave them alone, and because they know these certain things. And so I want to start rolling these out to you and get your mind deprogrammed, so you understand not only who they are but who you are, and really what's going on, because you're living in the matrix. You're still being deceived by very basic things. And let's go over. I'm gonna call this the Art of War Part 2. Now listen. As far as laws go, there's really only one, for a man, there's only one golden rule. It's basically do no harm to your fellow man or his property. That's the golden rule. That's what we live by, basically. And that's all you really are responsible for, is to do no harm to your fellow man. Now, they got you tied into these, you think you have duties and obligations to these municipal corporations that are really, they're pseudo governments, basically. They're corporations that are offering government services, and they're actually offering those government services, what I say, at the barrel of a gun. Hey, either pay us or we're going to do this bad thing to you. And so let's start learning some of the basics so we can sort of deconstruct their paperwork. And that's the first thing you want to do when you get one of these citations. Go look at my traffic ticket response and what I did with their paper there, how I just deconstructed point by point. Because everything on that document's fraud, and I'm going to stick it in their face in the form of an affidavit, which is going to be a problem for them. And in future videos, I'm going to show you how to stay out of their courts. And I've sort of almost showed you already in some videos how I stayed out of the traffic ticket court, my traffic ticket response. I mean, that was an administrative court. I didn't go to that hearing. That was March 1st. I didn't go to that hearing. Sent that guy affidavits, and I filed a judicial complaint against him, and then I went the second set of affidavits I sent right before the supposed hearing. Gee, that's 14 days, and they can't travel 3 miles from the post office in that town where the court is. Those documents have been unable to travel 3 miles, and gee, I wonder why that is. There's some bad things in those documents for that guy that thinks he's a judge, that he thinks he has authority over me. There's some really bad things in there for him. So I want to start unwinding your mind a little bit. Listen. When you look at these traffic tickets and these citations, it's always the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus Alfonso Nicholas Faciola, or the Borough of Ridley Park versus. Listen, you can't harm a fiction. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is a corporate fiction. It's all it is. It's a corporation that exists on a piece of paper. I can't harm the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania any more than I can harm Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck. And so if like I said, fictions and nothing to do. Fictions don't have rights, and anyone that says that, my God, it makes you want to take your head and bang it against the wall. A fiction does not have rights. Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck do not have rights. Okay, the men or women that own the rights to them have rights, but the corporate fiction, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, does not have rights, and neither does the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or any other state of Texas or whatever, wherever you live. Fictions don't have rights. Fictions don't do things. A fiction, a corporate fiction, does not have a set of arms and a brain to do things. A corporate fiction did not file a lawsuit against you or issue a citation against you. Fictions don't do things. Only men, and I'm going to say I'm going to use man instead of man and woman, instead of having to say man and woman all the time. When I say man, I'm talking about women too. Only a man doing business as the fiction can do things. All right, so that's why we always want to target down to who's making this claim. Who did this to me? It's the cop who wrote this ticket did it to me, or this local government bureaucrat, the tax collector, whoever's doing this thing to me. It's that man that's doing that thing to you. It's not the corporate fiction that he's claiming to represent. And don't let them speak for corporate fictions. Don't let them say they or we. No, 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 no. There is no they or we. I can't question a they or we. I can only question a man or woman. So I always need to know who the man or woman is. So these things are filed against you. Like I said, no one can speak or act for a corporate fiction. And lo and behold, who's the pettifogger shyster dirtball that always steps forward and claiming he could speak for a corporate fiction? It's the attorney. He's always claiming to speak and act for a corporate fiction, and he's always doing it. He's doing it against you, a man. So when he does that, he's committing fraud, forgery, and he's committing securities fraud when he's doing that. So this is why we go after the attorneys. I said file bar grievances early and often against these guys. In other words, listen, don't let no attorney try and claim he's speaking for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's like an attorney walking to court and stating he's speaking for Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck. If an attorney came in and did that, people would laugh at him. And you should laugh at him with this, too. For an attorney to walk in there and claim to speak for a sewer authority or for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it's an absurd claim. And you need to start unwinding this in your brain and calling them on it by pointing out the fraud in their documents and by submitting affidavits of status. So you don't have to argue with them about who you are. Affidavits of fact where you address that individual matter and your notice of claim. Because basically, if they're going to make claims against me, I'm going to make claims against them. And I would also recommend putting a fourth document in there. And you'll see it in my traffic ticket response. It's the deficiencies and irregularities in their document. I'll go through the document and do a forensic on it, and I'll number each thing next to, each little element on that document. I'll number it because I'm going to point out on a separate sheet everything on there's fraud. It's forgery and it's securities fraud what they're doing. So they're the 4 documents I'm going to shoot at them. And once I give them documents to them, I'm not showing up in that court. They have to come arrest me. And if somebody's stupid enough to come arrest me, now we're going to have problems because now I got affidavits in this matter. And now we're going to start unwinding the fraud and the forgery and the securities fraud of this whole thing. So I think once you lay your affidavits out there and your 4 documents that I just told you about, I don't think they're going to want to touch you. And proof of that is, like I said, I got a document that's wandering around. I think it's on the back of a turtle somewhere. It's been 14 days. This thing can't find it to the court. They do not want that green card coming back to me for this guy. That's going to be major problems for this guy. I'm going to get him sooner or later. If I have to personally serve him, I'm going to send a process server there to serve the guy. So sooner or later, he's going to get these documents. Let's talk about laws, statutes, codes, and ordinances. They don't apply to a man. Laws, statutes, codes, and ordinances don't apply to a man. Now, I know it's going to blow some people's minds to hear that. But let's look at the basics. I mean, how do I know this? Well, go watch the Rule of Zero video that I have up on YouTube that I did. It's really basic, but it's factual. It's truthful. This is what's going on. Listen, all men are created equal. All right, we know that. All men are created equal, and no man has authority to write something down on a piece of paper and impose it on another man or men. That's a magical power if you could do that. Gee, let me write something down on a piece of paper and let me impose it upon you. I can't do that. The only way I could take a document, or let's call it a written instrument, which is a law, a statute, a code, or ordinance, the only way I could take a written instrument and make it apply to you is by way of contract. Unless you sign a contract, you are not liable for that law, statute, code, or ordinance. It's another thing they don't want you to know. Because I said, if such things were possible, then other men would be, you've either got to be their property of the authors of these law, statutes, codes, and ordinances, or you've got to be in contract with them. And listen, just because you put, 100 people together and call them a legislature, it does not give them any more rights than a single man. We live in a republic. It's another thing. Get that out of your head, people saying we live in a democracy. No, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic, okay? Democracy is mob rule. In other words, 51 beats 49 all the time. You never want to live in a democracy. You want to live in a republic. And the advantage of living in a republic is that means that one man, his rights are equal to those 100 men calling themselves a legislature. Doesn't matter how many men they put together, it all comes out to zero. They have no more additional rights than you. So if you put 100 men together, they have no more additional rights than the one man opposing them. And they can't impose documents upon them. They can only impose documents upon entities under their jurisdiction, their employees, okay? People that have willingly decided to be under their jurisdiction. That's all they can apply these laws, statutes, codes, and ordinances to. They just can't willy-nilly apply them to everybody, but this is what's been going on. And no one's had an understanding, or let's say not no one. Many people have not had an understanding of how to counteract this. Let's talk about police officers. Who's a police officer? He's a private employee of the persons doing business as a government service corporation. Local borough of Ridley Park. Police officer is a private employee of the borough of Ridley Park. He's actually nothing more than a security guard with a gun. But he's purposely mistrained to extort money from you. This is how they train them. These are policy officers. These are revenue generators. Police policy officer. They're out to generate revenue from you. And the shame of it is, I think most all these guys think that they're doing the right thing. These policemen, they actually think they're doing the right thing. They don't know any better. They're not adept at law. And they'll act, the ones I see that act like they're adept at law, it's shocking when you see it. Because you get them in a real court of law, you tear them apart. But they jump to presumptions. And one of the things I need you guys to know that there's only two ways a police officer can interact with you. You got to get this in your head. He needs a signed warrant from a judge. Somebody's got to go to a judge and swear an oath under oath and affirmation, sign an affidavit stating that you've committed a crime or you're about to commit a crime, and then the judge will look at that affidavit and make a decision, and he'll sign a warrant. Okay, and then that warrant will be issued to the police officer, and they'll come get you. So, got to have one. He's got to have a warrant. The second is probable cause. When you hear the term probable cause, it means crime. Okay, a probable cause means crime. So I'll ask a cop many times, please articulate the probable cause. And I've heard cops say, well, you went through the red light or you went through the stop sign. That's not probable cause. That's a code infraction. It's not a crime. Going through a stop sign or a red light is a code infraction. It is not a crime. It's not probable cause. And like I said before, if a cop seen me blow through a stop sign and he pulled in my house and he couldn't get me because I went in my house already, and he went to a judge and said, hey, I seen that Fagiola guy. He blew through that stop sign. Judge, I'm going to need you to issue me a warrant so I can go get this guy. The judge would laugh at him because the judge knows me going through a stop sign or a red light is not probable cause. Okay? It's a code infraction. Violating codes is not a crime. They want you to believe it's a crime, and here's the real twisted thing of what they do. A lot of these traffic citations, they're actually considered criminal in most of these states, and they call it quasi-criminal. There's no such thing as quasi-criminal. It's either criminal or it's not, okay? It's either a civil matter or it's a criminal matter. So there is no quasi-criminal. So when they bring you in a court under some dumb traffic citation or mass citation, it's not a crime. There's no victim. There's no injured party here. There's nobody withstanding bringing this matter. And another thing I need you to know, the officer, the police officer, we talked about it. He's just a private employee of the municipal corporation. He is not an officer of the United States, okay? They give him that title, officer. It's like being an officer at McDonald's or Taco Bell. That's all that title is. That's all that title means, basically. Okay. The only thing dangerous is he's got a gun and he's probably mistrained. And the dangerous thing is, I've seen a lot of these guys and they're brutal. They will use their gun against you. So that's what you got to be careful about. But you just need to know that this is not an officer of the United States. He's a private employee of a municipal corporation. And when he activates his emergency lights, forces you off of the road, and then approaches your car by force of arms, which means he's got a gun on him, he's committed multiple crimes against you, all right? And we're going to get into a couple of those. But just some of the basics. Listen, traffic tickets, parking tickets, and other things. Listen, the police officer is not qualified to determine whether he has jurisdiction over you. And he's not qualified to determine if certain codes apply to you. Though you'd never know that by their actions. And unless you unwind this in your head and you know how to challenge this on paper, or if you get stuck in one of these kangaroo courts, knowing how to question them to take the cop apart. But listen, police officers act under presumptions. They act under the presumption they have jurisdiction over you, and they act under the presumption that their codes apply to you. And best piece of advice I can give you, don't talk to police officers. Whatever you do, don't talk to police officers. They're not there to make idle conversation and be your friend. They're digging to try and get more charges upon you. Because, geez, if he's got you pulled over for this thing, he thinks he could squeeze you for $150. Well, geez, maybe he can get something more out of you. Maybe this could turn into like $1,000, $2,000. So don't talk to these guys. And we're going to we'll go into about why you don't want to talk to these people. They're in violation of your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights, and we'll get into that. But listen, just some of the basics. A red light camera cannot be a witness. It can't testify. Yeah, I went through the light. So what? Okay? Just because I went through the light doesn't mean anything. If the codes don't apply to me, who cares I went through the light? Now, I'm not advocating running red lights and stop signs. I think they're good things. I have no problems with them, okay? I'm not worried about that. My problem is when the henchman forces me off the road with his emergency lights on and approaches my car with a gun on him. That's my problem. I'm not worried about the stop signs or the red light. I think they're good things, not a problem. It's the guy who approaches my car is the problem. A parking ticket meter maid also. I see some people up there with parking ticket stuff. Listen, the parking meter person can only testify that you were parked there at a certain time. So what? Again, we're talking about so what. If the codes don't apply to you, who cares if you were parked there? Remember, they're a corporation that exists only on a piece of paper. That's a fact. They're not the physical land. We talked about this already. The municipal corporation is not the physical land. They only exist on a piece of paper. So how can you violate parking somewhere because you're not parked on their property? You can only violate if you're parked on some owner's property, some private property of somebody. That's the only way you could violate something. You can't, if you're parked in the public, you can't violate no parking. There's no parking ordinance. They can write you. They're not the land. They're a municipal corporation. Another thing, that meter maid, they can't testify against you. They're not qualified to know if they have jurisdiction over you or if their parking codes apply to you. So they're nuisance things. Those I just shoot affidavits out and they go away. I mean, as long as you get your affidavit of status in there, your affidavit of facts, and I would throw a notice of claim at them, basically. And it doesn't have to be, you don't even have to ask for money. You basically state that, hey, listen, if you're going to force this and you're going to continue down this road, I'm going to make a claim against you guys at $10,000 or $15,000. Ball's in your court. I file my paperwork in there. I'm not showing up to any hearing, and I'm not sending anybody any money. I don't care what that piece of paper that meter maid put down there. I didn't contractually sign to that. That meter maid can't impose things upon me. They're ridiculous claims. If that meter maid had a real claim against me, that meter maid would have to go to court, file a complaint or a claim, attach a summons to it, and have it served to me by a process server so that I know who's coming at me and under what authority they're coming at me. Until I get that meter maid's paper, it's nothing. Okay, it's birdcage filler. That's all it is. And let's talk about the Fourth Amendment, just the basics, okay? The right of the people to be secure in their persons, house, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. No warrants shall issue but upon probable cause. There's probable cause. But upon a crime, when you read that, that's what that means. Supported by, look, an oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. There you have it, basically. Now, to me, if I go to a stop sign and some private employee of a municipal corporation puts his emergency lights on, forces me off the road, and approaches my car by force of arms, I'm sorry, in my understanding and my decision, that's an unreasonable search and seizure of me. That guy has no authority to do that. He can only stop me if he's got a warrant or if he's got probable cause. And we know he doesn't have probable cause. So to me, that's what he's done is an unreasonable search and seizure. So I'm going to tick that one when I file my affidavit of facts. Let's look at Amendment 5. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case. Remember, we said most traffic stuff is criminal. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. So when that cop stops you and starts asking you questions, you are testifying against yourself. You're incriminating yourself. Every time you open your mouth, I don't care how innocent you think what you're saying is, you're incriminating yourself. So my first thing to the cop, I'm going to say, sir, anything I say or do, can you use it against me in a court of law? He's got to say yes. Sir, I wish to exercise my Fifth Amendment right here. and not incriminate myself. And if he says, well, I'm just talking to you, I'm just asking you a question. No, sir, you could take anything I say and use it against me, sir. I am not going to incriminate myself. And look, nor shall be deprived of liberty, of life, liberty, property without due process of law. You know what due process of law is? Due process of law means a notice and an opportunity to defend yourself. Well, you're not getting much of a notice and opportunity to defend yourself when some guy forces you off the road and he approaches your car with a gun. No, it's force, threat, and intimidation. Force, threat, and duress he's operating under. And yeah, look, I've seen a lot of people deprived of their property. I've seen cars taken for dumb little things, dumb little traffic citations, because the car owner would not go along with the cop or would not answer his questions. I said you got all kinds of cops. Some are good, some are bad, some are downright dangerous. I don't argue with cops. I mean, I'll get my basic stuff out, and I'll sort of warn him in a way of what's going to happen, and then the ball's in his court. But I'm not going to get in an argument with this guy, and that's why I like to use the affidavit of status as my ID when I get stopped, because I don't need to argue with him. There's my rights there, and he could argue all he wants that that's not an identification. No, it's a state officer that verified that with that seal and signature. Damn right, it's an ID. It's as good as any ID they have. Here's other things that we're talking about. We know the officer, he's not an officer of the United States. We know he's a private employee of the municipal corporation. So like I said, he's nothing more than a glorified security guard, but he's a little more dangerous because he's got the gun and he will use it. That's the scary part. But let's go look at Title 18, 912, officer or employee of the United States. Whoever falsely assumes or pretends to be an officer or employee acting under the authority of the United States. Now, this guy's not acting under the authority of the United States. He's acting under the authority of the municipal corporation, who has no way of proving that they have jurisdiction over you. So, look, he's not acting under the authority of the United States or any department, agency, or officer thereof, and acts as such or in such pretended character, demands or obtains any money, paper, document, or thing of value, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. This is every traffic stop that happens. This is going on. Title 18, 912. Okay? People think he's an officer. He's not. He's a private employee. And one of the questions I would ask them, and I do ask them, sir, are you not a private employee of a municipal corporation? They don't like that one. They don't like that question, because it exposes the fraud. He's not an officer. This guy's not an officer of the United States, so he has no authority to do what he's doing to you right now. If it's based on some code infraction, some dumb stuff, you committed a crime, that's a different story. But if it's some code infraction stuff, he's got no authority to be doing what he's doing. Let's go look at 18 U.S. Code 913. Look at that. Impersonator making an arrest or search. Whoever falsely represents himself to be an officer, agent, or employee of the United States, and in such assumed character arrests or detains any person, or in any manner searches the person, buildings, or other property of any person, shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. Whoever falsely represents himself to be an officer, agent, or employee of the United States. This guy's not an officer of the United States, but he's acting under this assumed authority over you. He's just a private employee of a municipal corporation. But he's sort of banking on this officer title. That you hear officer and you think official, that he's got this official power over you, and he doesn't. Okay? So I use these in my affidavits of fact when I throw them at these officers. And this scares the hell out of them. Because how's this guy going to come into court, this private employee of a municipal corporation, and explain how he got authority to determine he had jurisdiction over me? Because courts have to work to get personal and subject matter jurisdiction. They just don't assume, they just can't assume they have it. They got to work to get it. So how's this officer, this guy claiming to be an officer, how did he magically get it? Another thing, he's a member of the executive branch, these officers, even under their corporate statute, their corporate setup. He's a member of the executive branch. It means he can only execute orders. He's not a lawmaker. He can't determine law. He can't make legal decisions. He's not a lawyer. He's not a judge. He's not a court. Okay. He can only execute orders, he can execute a warrant, or if he sees a crime being committed, he can intervene. That's his real job. That's what a peace officer is, okay? But this guy's acting like a policy officer, a police officer. So there's no way this guy's ever going to be walking to court. If you know what you're doing, you know the basics, there's no way he's going to be able to explain how, one, he has jurisdiction over me to stop me, and two, that the codes apply to me. And I've seen this happen, actually seen it happen where I've seen prosecutors impeach the officer because you ask them a certain set of questions, and the prosecutor will jump up and state that the officer is not qualified to make legal determinations. Well, the officer's already made a ton of legal determinations. One, he determined he had jurisdiction over you when he stopped you. He determined the codes applied to you. And I've seen it happen. And when that happens, you say, sir, Mr. Prosecutor just impeached his own witness. I'm going to need you to strike the testimony and strike the ticket because, as Mr. Prosecutor said, he's not qualified to make legal determinations, legal decisions. So you got to get the basics down. You know, you need to know there's only two ways an officer can stop you. It's a probable cause and it's a warrant. And if he stops you for any other reason, he's committed crimes against you, committed multiple crimes against you. Too many for me to list here. But I mean, that's the most obvious is he's violating your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. He's actually trying to get you, by force of arms, to be a witness against yourself by asking you questions. Imagine, you know, you approach somebody with a gun. Yeah, they're gonna talk to you because they're afraid of you, and everything that person says is they're just digging a deeper hole for themselves. So that's the main question you say to a cop, sir. Anything I say or do, can you use it against me? He's got to say yes. And when he says yes, you say, sir, I'm going to exercise my Fifth Amendment right, and I choose not to incriminate myself. That's it, okay? So I just want to get some of these basics down and start to unwind. Listen, there's a lot of stuff. I understand that for people. There's a lot of stuff to go over. So I just want to get a couple, you know, quick hits in. Little thing here, little thing there. So you pick up a little each day, and the puzzle pieces will start to come together for you. You just have to stay with it and you know, watch the videos that I put up there, some of the interviews I did. You know, we cover a lot of this stuff. But yeah, you just got to start to get to know the basics. And like I said, don't get overwhelmed. Don't let these people intimidate you. And listen, the pen is mightier than the sword. There's no doubt about it. So learn how to use the affidavits and learn how to question these people, and learn about the Socratic method of questioning somebody, where you're always asking questions. You're not making statements when I'm asking somebody, sir, what evidence did you have that you had jurisdiction to stop me? Sir, what evidence do you have that your codes apply to me? And you let them dig their hole. You know, whatever he answers, I'm probably going to walk him down that path also, until I walk him into a brick wall where he can't move. I've done it with property assessors. I've done it with other people. This is how you handle yourself with these people. So just get these little pieces down, and we'll do a little bit each day. And so just stick with it, and just keep reading and stay. And the Telegram group's great. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of good people in there, and you can get you need questions answered, jump in the Telegram group and throw your question up there. And you know, if I'm in there, I'll try and answer it. And if I'm not, there's a lot of good people in there. My God, you got Brett, Brett Fountain from the Randy Kelton Show. Brett filed 25 bar grievances last month. that's a guy you want to talk to him when Brett's in there. You know, you can ask him questions, and Brett's real good with that stuff. So just stay with it, guys. Thanks.